So, how do you teach a computer to do more than just see an image? How do you teach it to actually describe what it's seeing with, rich, human-like language? Well, today we're going to break down a really fascinating AI framework that's tackling that exact problem.
All right, have a look at this. I mean, you and I, we see a delicious-looking cupcake, right? You can practically taste that chocolate and the creamy frosting. But for an AI, just understanding this image, well, that's a huge challenge.
You see, an AI might look at that and just come back with a simple label like dessert. And okay, it's not wrong. But how do we get it to go from that to something way more detailed, like a chocolate cake with cream frosting? That leap is a monumental one in AI, and it's exactly the puzzle we're digging into today.
So before we can really appreciate the breakthrough here, we've got to understand the two major hurdles that AI models have been bumping up against for years.
For the longest time, AI models were basically specialists. You had models that were fantastic at understanding things. Like, you could ask it to find all your photos of a dog at the beach, and it could do it. Then you had totally separate models that were good at generating things, like writing a caption for a photo. Getting a single model to do both of those things well, that was incredibly tough.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. The researchers behind this put it perfectly. It was like having a friend who's a great listener but can't tell a story to save their life, or a fantastic storyteller who just can't seem to understand a simple question.
The second huge problem is all about the data. For an AI to learn, it needs to see millions upon millions of images with text descriptions. And the easiest place to get that? The internet, of course. But the internet is a mess. The text that comes with an image is often just not quite right or sometimes totally wrong. And that is a terrible way for an AI to learn.
So you've got this specialist model problem and this messy data problem. How in the world do you solve both at the same time? Well, let's meet the really ingenious solution from this paper. It's called BLIP, and that stands for Bootstrapping Language Image Pre-Training. That word bootstrapping is the key here. The whole idea is to create a flexible model that can also improve or bootstrap the very data it's learning from. It pulls itself up by its own bootstraps. Pretty clever, right?
So how does BLIP actually pull this off? Well, its first big idea is a new kind of model architecture that's basically a Swiss Army knife for vision and language.
It's called MED, or the Multimodal Mixture of Encoder-Decoder. So let's break that down real quick. Think of an encoder as the part that reads and understands information. It gets the main idea. A decoder does the opposite. It takes that idea and generates something new from it, like a sentence. The cool thing about MED is that it's not stuck being just one or the other. It can actually switch between these modes, depending on the job.
And because of this single unified model can now do three totally distinct things. It can encode, which is basically getting the essence of an image and some text. It can match, figuring out if a caption really fits a picture. And it can generate, writing brand new captions completely from scratch. It's one model with three really powerful skills.
Now that awesome Swiss Army knife model is really only half the story. BLIP's second superpower is how it deals with all that messy internet data that we were talking about.
This part is called CapFilt, which is short for captioning and filtering. You can think of it like an automated internal quality control system. It has two parts that work as a team. A creative part, the captioner, that writes new descriptions, and a really strict editor, the filter.
Let's see this in action with an example. So here's a typical image you might find online. It's a castle. Pretty straightforward. Now, let's look at the text that it came with.
So the original text is a historical fact, which, is interesting, but it's not a visual description of what's actually in the picture. This is exactly what we mean by noisy data. It doesn't help teach an AI how to see.
This is where the captioner part of the team steps in. It looks at the picture of the castle, and it generates a totally new, purely visual description, a large stone castle with two flags on its towers against a cloudy sky. Now that is a useful description.
And that brings us to the final brilliant step. The filter, that strict editor, looks at both the original text and the new one and decides which captions are a good match. That historical fact, it gets thrown out. But the new descriptive caption gets a big green checkmark. The AI is literally cleaning its own data.
Okay, so we've got a flexible model and a super clever way to clean up data. But does it actually work? Well, the results are pretty remarkable.
Across the board, BLIP just shows major improvements. For image retrieval, it's 2.7% better. For writing captions, it's 2.8% better.
And even on tough tasks like answering questions about an image, it gets a solid 1.6% boost. And trust me, in the world of AI, those are significant gains.
And what's really impressive is that it does this without just throwing more data at the problem. I mean, look at this comparison to the previous leading model, BLIP. They both used the exact same number of training images, 14 million, and BLIP still comes out clearly on top. It's proof that better quality data really does beat sheer quantity.
Okay, so let's zoom out. What's the big picture here? What should we really take away from BLIP's success?
I think there are 3 huge points. First, this shows that a single model really can be a jack of all trades and a master of them too, excelling at both understanding and generating. Second, and this is a big one, AI is learning to clean its own training data. That is a massive step forward. And finally, it just reinforces that fundamental lesson: garbage in, garbage out. High-quality data is really the secret ingredient for smarter AI.
And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought. For years, one of the biggest bottlenecks in AI has been the need for these massive, perfectly curated datasets. But if AI can now start to curate its own data from the messy, endless web, what does that unlock? If it can break this barrier, what's the next great challenge it's going to teach itself to overcome?